4 people, 2 bartenders friends, and about 50 entrepreneurs, right? A little different tonight, so thank you guys for coming in. We push it back just a few minutes so that we can let people keep coming in. We have still a few people running late, so that'll be okay. So for anybody that doesn't know, my name is Kazir Khalili. I'm the chapter director here at Start Grind, also CEO and co-founder of a local startup called Mentor. So if anybody doesn't know, Start Grind is a global community of entrepreneurs, and it's new here in Baton Rouge. Actually 3 months old. We've had 3 events now with Matthew Armstrong of Block Lawn Care, Vishal Vishanti of Relief Telemed, and now we have Mallory Whitfield this month. So we're going to continue bringing amazing speakers to you guys to learn, to get insight into different topics, and more importantly, more than anything, find connections. Start Grind overall is in 600 plus countries, 600 plus cities, 125 countries, 3.5 million entrepreneurs in that global community. And if you've been to the other 2 events, that backdrop image is actually new, and Baton Rouge is in the map. It's in there. We are official. So I was in the Bay Area for almost 10 days last week, and you know, if anyone's ever been out there, there's a lure, right? There's a lure of being out there because everyone's doing a business. And I think when we talk about tech startups, that's where you want to be. You want to be around other entrepreneurs. And you know, and you get this like jittery feeling when you're around someone, you're like, yeah, I get it. Because when you first become an entrepreneur, you're like, yeah, like, oh, you do that too? Cool, I risk everything too, man. That's really great. If anybody hasn't been here before, memes, that's where I live. So you're going to see a lot more of these. So just brace yourselves. So, but here's the thing though. After coming back and through my entrepreneurial journey, I've learned something. I've learned that I don't know shit. I've learned that time and time again. You know, when we talk about like, there's all these terms people are throwing out there, right? For me, 6 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, so somebody said, hey, you should think about raising a convertible note. What is that? Is that a fancy note card? What is that? Like, what does that mean? You know? But we don't know, and especially as we're starting this journey, we have to look to other people for help. And on that journey is a lot of ups and downs. And your weekdays when you thought, you know, you're like, yeah, you know, I'm doing my own thing now. It just doesn't turn out that way. This, by the way, so this is actually from last week, and I just got so much of a good response from it. I just want to show you that hasn't been here. When you become an entrepreneur, you have expectations. You're like, I'm gonna blow out the water. I'm gonna take over the market share. I'm gonna make $1 million. You think you're gonna be the best, right? You think you might be Joe Burrow, but in reality, that just might not be the case. And that happens the best of us. We're second best of us. But along the way, so one thing I'll tell you guys that I've learned a lot is about giving and about receiving. So give first is very near and dear to my heart. It's the ability to be able to reach out and give to other people without an expectation of getting anything back. You do that over and over and over, and you start getting returns that you never would have believed. So we're going to try that actually today. We're going to try it right now. So if you're holding, who has one of those cards? I gave 4 people a card. What are they? Coasters. Raise your hand if you have a coaster. 1, 2, 3. Where's my 4th? No, that's a card. Yeah, put that down. That's not that. You said, all right.
It's a circle.
It's a coaster. It's something you put.
It's a coaster. So everybody has a Let's Connect card with them. Y'all see that? All right. This is your chance to give. So what's going to happen is one entrepreneur will be up here, and they're going to spend 20 seconds really quickly saying, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's what I need help with. And you get 10 seconds to just throw your card at them. You don't have to be sure if you can help them. You don't have to know exactly who you're connecting with. As long as you have a thought of it, throw that card their way. That's it. That's all we're going to do, okay? So, I'll go first, just to give everybody an example. If you're one of those 4, come on up. Let's do it. Come on. It'll be really quick. Right, okay. So, if you'll just take a line right there. Everybody's got the card ready? Hi, my name is Kazim Khalili. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mentor and also chapter director of Startup Grind. Startup Grind is a monthly recurring event series where we bring in entrepreneurs and we connect other entrepreneurs with people they need to meet, as well as information they may need. What I need help with to continue this is I need partners and sponsors that can put energy and fuel into this. Can anyone help me? Thank you. Can anyone else help me? Anyone? I'm out. Okay, next. Go. Let's go.
My name is Preston Den. I'm the founder and CEO of an intro company. I started last year at LSU. It's a company dedicated to helping college students find a healthy alternative to prescription stimulants like Adderall and Vyvanse. It's a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business. We just ordered product. It's coming in this week.
What do you need, Preston? What do you need? What do you need?
Basically everything.
New startups and new LLCs, and I really need help with marketing, specifically social media, because I have terrible money.
Anybody can help her? Can anybody help her? Go. Great. Killed it. Thank you. Next.
So I'm Branson Morgan, founder of Map My Parking. What we do is connect parking assets to drivers and drivers to parking assets. And by that, we digitize parking assets. We show maps on navigation, so drivers can find parking spots easily. So what I need help is value proposition creation, design, and so pre-seed funding.
All right.
Yes. My card. It's good. Next.
Hello, my name is Victoria. I'm partnered with the Juice Plus company, which is basically fruits and vegetables in a capsule. It is the most researched nutritional product in the world. So I'm looking for people that know they need more fruits and vegetables, or people that are in the health and wellness industry, chiropractors, doctors, because of the research, fitness influencers, and stuff like that.
Anyone in the industry? There we go. And Kara. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. So, guys, so that's really quick, right? But all I'm trying to show here is that it is okay to ask for help. It is perfectly fine to come out and say, I suck at this. Can someone please help me? Obviously, say it in a nicer way, say it in a way that they would want to help you, but there's a way to do it. And now I challenge the 4 people that just were up there. Now it's your turn to give back. So, and for the rest of the night, the next person you network with, you should end your conversation with, how can I help you? How can I help you? Because you've just been given something. Whether it was one card, maybe it's somebody you already knew, it doesn't matter. Okay? Now return the favor, and that's how our successful ecosystem begins to grow. So guys, we are doing a wrap-up podcast here live after the event, and Patrick is going to bring 3 people to do 5 minutes with each, and I think we picked Branson. Branson, you're going to be a part of it, and then Patrick will pick 2 more people as soon as the fireside chat is over. Right?
As soon as the fire chat is over, you should give me your card, so that way you can go through the cards and pick who.
Yeah, and then y'all just stay there. He's got equipment set up. It just gives you 5 minutes to get spotlight for a company that maybe you haven't even started yet. Maybe you just want to talk about how you love entrepreneurship. It doesn't matter. We're just trying to create opportunities, okay? Next, we have a variety of things that we're giving away. We have a Startup Grind Star Wars themed T-shirt, and whoever you are, we'll ship you the size. We have the salesperson's paradox from my mentor and advisor, Douglas Filiati. And we have gift cards from Cane's, gift cards from Denim Patty. Hey there, little person. And then lastly, last month we gave the Concepts Planner away. We have another one on the way, so whoever wins it, we're going to ship it directly to you. They've just been out of stock, but you're still going to get that. How do you do that? Essentially, you take a picture, maybe you take a picture like this. You just go, hey, like that. And maybe somebody smiles, maybe they don't. And you just go straight to your Instagram.
Or Facebook.
And you just put it on your story, so I'll do that right now. and then I'll put at startup grind BR done and post. Very simple. Now I'm entered. I hope I win everything. Okay. All right. So, guys, the reason we're all here tonight is to hear from an entrepreneur, somebody that's been there, somebody that's done that. Mallory Whitfield, I'll give a quick bio, is an accomplished New Orleans-based artist, performer, keynote speaker. She has spoken everywhere from Vanderbilt, West Texas A&M, Louisiana Small Business Development Center, NOE, and many more. In 2016, she was named a Gambit 40 Under 40, which is saluted the brightest innovators, artists, and professionals in New Orleans. As Director of Marketing at Look For, she spearheaded the expansion of the 3rd and 4th annual Lovelace Awards. She also creates and publishes Look For's Southern Star Report, a twice-monthly newsletter coming with the latest tech startup happenings in the American Southeast. And I met Mallory, as a bystander, and we were at one of the startups in Collision. She walked by us. She looked at what we were doing. And she's like, "Y'all in Louisiana?" I'm like, "Yep." She goes, "Haven't heard of y'all." I'm like, "Great, no one has. Great." The next day, so that was May 3rd. The next day, May 4th, I got an email that I was on the Southern Star Report. And since then, I have really been thankful that you walked by, and now we're excited to finally have you up here. So please give a round of applause for Mallory. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm
Welcome,
happy to
Vanner.
be here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming all this way.
Yeah.
All the way
It's
up
not
here.
that far.
Yeah, it's an hour. It's actually not that bad. We just like to have a gesture that's being very thankful. So I gave a quick bio. Maybe if you could, let's just start. Maybe if you could go back and tell us maybe where Mallory's story started. Before all this entrepreneurial mess that you're in?
Before the entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Well, that's the best part, This is all downhill, for all of us.
So I was born in New Orleans. I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and then I've spent my whole adult life in New Orleans. I went to college at Loyola University. And growing up on the coast, I did a lot of theater. I was always kind of that weird outsider kid. I actually ended up skipping out on the last year and a half of high school because I begged my parents. I was like, I don't understand why I have to take calculus and all this other stuff that is never going to matter to my life. It's not the way my brain is wired. So skipped out on the last year and a half of high school early, went to community college for a year, then ended up at Loyola. And I thought that I wanted to do theater. In high school and growing up, I really thought I was going to move to New York and pursue the theater thing. And then as soon as I started doing theater at Loyola, I hated it. I started out as a theater major, dropped it to a minor, and ended up graduating a couple of production credits short of even that minor. Basically, school made me hate the thing that I loved. So I was like, what else am I just interested in learning about? I ended up graduating with a history degree, which I think a lot about lately. I'm starting to work on writing my book, and I've been thinking about this, and I feel like studying history and just a broad overview of history was really helpful in the way I'm trying to process humanity now and the way that we all interact with each other, right? So got my history degree, worked for a few years at the Louisiana State Museum, so I actually used my degree for a hot second. And around the same time that I graduated college, started working at the State Museum, I also started having inklings of other entrepreneurial ideas of things I wanted to do. My last little semester of college, I did a study abroad in London, and I went to all of these amazing outdoor markets where there was these people selling their handmade clothing and jewelry and all this stuff, and I was like, I want to do that. I'd started doing a lot of sewing when I was doing theater, just figuring out how to make my own costumes and stuff. So right around the time I graduated college, I ended up starting to sell some of my own handmade clothing. Started doing art markets and things like that around New Orleans. So basically, ever since college, I've been an entrepreneur in some fashion. A lot of times it's been balancing some sort of either part-time or full-time day job with entrepreneurship, sometimes being pretty much all on my own as a freelancer / entrepreneur, occasionally having full-time jobs. It's always been a mix of things, but my parents and grandparents both were entrepreneurs in their own way. My grandparents on my mom's side growing up, they had antique shops in Slidell. So I always had entrepreneurs growing up. My mom still now owns the flea market and RV park on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. If you drive through past Christian on the interstate, that's my mom's. So I don't think I'm wired to work full time for somebody else. Whenever I try, I can only last like a few months or a few years, and then I'm itching to do something on my own.
Yeah, that feels like so much of what a lot of entrepreneurs feel. They wanting to do something creative, wants to do something they're passionate about. Now, you sold a lot of your own handmade clothing and accessories for how many years? How long did you do that?
So when I started selling, it was around 2004. It was right after college. I did my first craft market, and then I did it for a decade.
Wow.
So I
And were you sustained fully by doing that?
No. This wasn't me doing this full time. It was me doing a combination of doing art markets and craft shows and online stuff.
Interesting.
As well as having sometimes a full-time job, sometimes a part-time job. It kind of fluctuated a lot depending over the course of the years. Towards the end, I got to the point where I was doing the Frenchman Art Market. This was right when that had started. I don't know if any of y'all have been down to Frenchman Street in New Orleans, so they have this like nighttime art market. And I was there when they started it the very first year during Jazz Fest, and it was insane. It was like the most money I ever made in one market. I was like, I want to keep doing this. Like, I'm just taking cash. I can't even keep up with the money being thrown at me. But I got started doing that where I would do it every single night, the 4 nights they were open.
Yeah.
And that market was exhausting. It was amazing, but exhausting because it was nighttime, so you're dealing with drunk people.
Yeah, New Orleans.
New Orleans. It's outdoors, and the way that they had it set up, it's beautiful. So there's these like string lights, kind of like in this room, but they didn't have it set up in a way that we could have our own tents. Like when I would do a lot of festivals, you would bring your tent, so if something happened, it started raining, you were protected. This market, you couldn't have your tent. So there was like one night where there was a torrential downpour at like 11 p.m. and I just got soaked, and so did all of my stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was like dealing with that up and down of that was very exhausting.
When was the turning point of, so you come out of college, you're a history major, that's great, and you used it, which is great, and we'd take it this different route if you didn't, but at what point after you started selling the accessories, and you did that for about a decade, at what point was it, okay, I need to start transitioning. I need to do something different, because what you do now does not resemble, I think your persona maybe does,
Yeah.
You have a very artistic persona, but when did the change happen?
Yeah, so the whole time that I was doing those art markets and craft shows, I had this vision of wanting to own a retail store. That's part of, I was trying to bootstrap my way to being able to open a retail store. I went through this period of like wanting to take out a huge bank loan and wanting to open the retail store, but I went to the Small Business Development Center and they talked me off the ledge, and they were like, you start the online thing first, bootstrap this, and I'm so glad that I listened to them.
Yeah.
So I was trying to work it towards having a full-time brick and mortar store. In 2013, after I'd been doing this for almost a decade of art markets and cobbling this together, I went with my mom and my sister on this vacation to Ireland. So my mom had this diagnosis where we thought she was going to go blind. Luckily that stabilized afterwards, but my sister and I freaked out. We were like, we want my mom to see she's never seen Ireland and she loves that stuff. She was born on St. Patrick's Day. So we took her on this trip, and the whole time she was stressed out and worried about her business back home. And I was like, I cannot be stuck to a location-based business. It was like a wake-up call for me. And between like just doing that art market hustle and getting caught in rainstorms and all that stuff, I started to think about, okay, what's my next step? Like this thing that I was working towards for so long is not the thing that I want to do anymore.
Yeah.
So I started to think about it and just think like, just as far as making money, that alone, like what skills do I have that are marketable? And I realized marketing was one of those skills because I taught myself so much about it from just running my own business. And
marketing came first, right? Before where you are now, TowardsTogether, before speaking.
Yeah, and I still do some marketing to pay the bills.
Yeah, of course. We all do something to pay the bills. So now I understand, when you first got started in marketing, not wanting to have that brick and mortar. how'd you make that entrance? Because there's, you just went and applied for a job that's in marketing. You found something remote. Because a question I think that I see entrepreneurs ask me, and sometimes I face is, okay, if I want to pick my bags up, I want to move, let's say, to Austin, to Nashville. How do I go about just picking up the next job? Something completely different. It seems like it was such a big transition for you, or at least from my point of view.
Yeah.
Was it?
So it's funny because literally as I was driving up here, I was listening to a bunch of podcasts from different professional speakers, and one of the things that they were just talking about was the power of leveraging your network. They were talking about it from when you're trying to break into speaking, but the power of leveraging your network within anything entrepreneurial,
Absolutely.
or even just if you want like a full-time job and you just want a new one.
Yeah.
When I decided I wanted to go towards marketing, I realized I had been involved in helping to plan other events in New Orleans. There was this event that went on from about the year after Katrina, so like 2006 to maybe 2012 or so, called Rising Tide Conference. So it was a lot of bloggers who had been involved in just all sorts of blogging from pre-Katrina up to that point. And I got involved around like 2010, 2011, and we produced this second like side piece to the main conference, because there wasn't a lot of blogging events in New Orleans at the time, and I would see these things happening in other cities and I enjoyed going to them, but there wasn't a lot of like marketing blogger type stuff in New Orleans. So I worked with them to create this secondary schedule, the second stage of conference stuff at Rising Tide. And when I did that, I'd met Mackenzie, who runs FSC Interactive, which is a marketing agency in New Orleans. They specialize in just digital marketing. So I met her and some other people from FSC Interactive. So when I started looking for this new job in marketing, I went on WorkNola, which is a job posting website in New Orleans, and I noticed that FSC Interactive had a part-time job open for a search engine optimization coordinator. And I was like,
So you went for
okay.
it.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
like, I know people who work for and own this company at least a little bit.
Right.
I've helped them in the past, right?
Maybe they can help me.
Yeah, exactly. And it worked out because I'd already had enough of a relationship with them that even though I didn't have like technical proven experience from working for somebody else doing those things, I could demonstrate to them that I knew the things that they needed me to do. I'd just done them on my own that whole time.
Right. And so, and I feel like as entrepreneurs, we definitely have to learn a lot of different crafts, and we have to just be a master of a lot of things. We have to be sales, we have to be marketing, and I think there's more benefit there than we see. There, in terms of reaching out and trying to get a different job, we could change fields in a hurry, and by just saying, hey, look, I know how to run a business. I don't know how to do this task, but you better believe I can figure it out. Did that lead you over to Look Far, where you became the director of marketing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And do you still maintain that role?
So in beginning of like 2014 is when I got that part-time job at FSC Interactive, and then after being in a part-time position there for a few months, they quickly realized that I was very valuable at what I was doing, and they bumped me into a full-time position. I was there full-time for a couple of years or so when I started getting that itch. And I ended up negotiating myself down to a part-time role there, which they made an exception for me because they realized I was valuable enough that they were willing to do it.
You negotiated to do less.
I negotiated, so
Awesome.
I went from a salaried role to 32 hours a week. So basically I got to have my one day off where I could at least have that off. So we switched me back to a hourly rate, but I also was still able to stay on with the health insurance and stuff there, which was amazing.
Yes.
So then I had that time off. I started trying to do teaching courses and stuff, teaching marketing for creative entrepreneurs and artists and things, because I thought that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I realized it's not really what I wanted to do, so I got kind of burnt out. I was like, this isn't working, and I started just getting really frustrated. So I kind of started looking for other potential jobs and opportunities and trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And in the summer of 2017, I'd been doing some speaking through FSC. That's how I got into doing speaking, because when I first started there, we had this program We would teach small business owners how to do the basics of social media, how to do search engine optimization. So I started doing some speaking while I was in that role. So in the summer of 2017, there was an organization, New Orleans Women in Tech, which isn't really active anymore, unfortunately. But they had an event that was about public speaking for women in technology, like to help women who wanted to speak at tech conferences know how to do that and put together presentations and PowerPoints and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I led a workshop about that, and it was hosted at the offices of Lookfar. And after me doing that presentation, the Lindsay Fox, who's their VP of Sales and Brand Strategy, came up to me and she was like, "Are you open to other jobs? Like, I know you have a great job at FSC Interactive, but I was like, yeah, let's talk."
Awesome.
So that was 2.5 years ago. And then about a year in, the company went through some transitions. So part of the company got sold off to a couple of the other managers. But I have been there in like a part-time role the last 1.5 years doing the Southern Startup Report, which is a twice monthly email newsletter.
So I want to go to that now.
Yeah.
So and then it's interesting. For 1.5 years, the only way I knew you was when I saw your picture on Southern Startup Report, and I'm like, "There's Mallory." Like that's all I knew. So you put this together. You have a pulse. I mean, I feel like you have a pulse of what's happening here in our region. Is that do you believe you do?
I feel like more than your average bear.
Okay. So, and how long have you been doing Southern Startup Report? 2 years?
About 2.5 years now. So when I started at Lookfar, my predecessor, Alec Cole, had already started the Southern Startup Report. It was his idea, and he'd been doing it for a year or more before me. Because he basically saw a gap where it was really hard for him to find out information about what was happening in technology and startups across the whole Southeast. It was all kind of like in separate places.
Yeah.
So he started curating a newsletter so that it was kind of all just recapped every couple of weeks. And I took that over from him and have tweaked some things and been doing it since then.
Okay. For you, having done it now for over 2 years, where do you see our region going? I mean, that's like my burning question, at all times. It's like, is there, I see the deals, 30 million, 5 million, great. Some companies, don't seem, it seems like I'm not even aware of them, before they hop on the scene. Of course, this is my only source of information.
Yeah.
Where have you seen us go this last 2 years, and do you have a sense of maybe where we're going?
Well,
or your hot take on it. I mean, based on the information that you have, the people you talk to.
Yeah, so I was because I was actually putting together a Southern Startup Report. It's already scheduled. I'm done. It's going out tomorrow morning. So if you're already on the list, you'll see. So this is like a preview. But I was thinking about this question as I was putting that together today. And I gave a presentation a few weeks ago at Vanderbilt University about kind of an overview of the region. And so everybody defines the Southeast region differently. That's the other thing that is really confusing and hard to kind of get a pulse, because some reports include Louisiana, some don't, some include Texas, some don't, some include like Washington, D.C. and Virginia. It's like, so then you're trying to piece together all of this data that is like disjointed. So for the purposes of how I put together the Southern Startup Report, since we're in Louisiana, I go ahead and include Texas just because there's so much that happens in Austin, in Dallas, in Houston, that it's helpful for me to kind of like bookend us in New Orleans and Baton Rouge in Louisiana in between what's happening in Texas and what's happening over in Atlanta and Florida and North Carolina, right?
And by the way, that's so we've applied to stuff in Texas because of that report.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you do that, because if not, there would just be black. Like we would look to our left and there'd be nothing. And knowing what's happening in a state that's, the furthest is Austin, Texas, 6.5 hours away from here in Baton Rouge. So I appreciate that, because it surely would be hard to see the closest thing being in Atlanta. There's not much happening in Mississippi and Alabama.
Yeah.
Not to come down on them, but
But that's the thing, right? Is like having only ever lived in Louisiana and Mississippi, which are so often at the bottom of every list.
Yep.
It's like, can we all rise together? even putting together that report today, one thing I noticed, there tends to be these hot spots, like Austin and Dallas and Houston always have a lot going on. Atlanta often has a lot going on.
Yeah.
I've noticed Tampa and a lot of South Florida has a lot of
Tampa's
activity.
growing, yeah.
They definitely, and then North Carolina in particular, like they have a lot of biotech in the same way that New Orleans and Baton Rouge and stuff will have a lot of that. And when I put together this report for tomorrow, so if you've never seen it, I basically put together kind of like overviewing news broken down by city, whatever's happening. And then I have this section that's recent rounds. So any companies that have gotten funding in the last couple of weeks. In this one, this is not how it usually breaks down, but in this one, it was all funding rounds in Texas, North Carolina, and Florida. I think that was like all of the rounds in the last 2 weeks that I could find.
Wow.
It's not normally that depressing, but I
Yeah.
was like, we're gonna talk about this tonight, and this is what it looks like.
So is anyone, who in here is familiar with the Start report? Okay, so less than half the room. This is good. No, this is good because this is the kind of information. Coming here is one thing, and we can talk and we can see what's happening in our little pockets of our city. Okay, so if somebody wanted to sign up for this, I'm gonna, shine on you now. What if somebody wanted to sign up for the Southern report? Where would they go?
Yeah, it's not a simple little link, but if you Google search Southern Startup Report, you should be able to find it. It's on Look Far's website.
And I'll do this in the follow-up email. I'll send a link to
direct
it.
link, yeah.
So I'll put a direct link in there afterwards. Sign up for it. It's an awesome piece of news. I mean, for me, when we see it, I'm like, oh, great. Something that's not TechCrunch and something that's not like hearing about all the things that are happening on the Bay. And even having just came back and all the hype there, it's like I want to get the hype that's happened in our area.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive a little deeper into that. What about our area? Our area specifically.
You mean Baton Rouge or New Orleans?
New Orleans. I'll give you New Orleans. I know this Baton Rouge. Let's just say New Orleans because it still affects us. Anything that's positive for New Orleans is a positive for us, and that's the way it should be. So. Is there any developments in New Orleans over the last 6-8 months that we should be aware of that you see as a positive?
I mean, well, just in the most recent report before the one that's going out tomorrow, Advano, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but there's a battery, they're making this like revolutionary battery material, and they just got a pretty big funding round just a couple weeks ago. I feel like Level Set, which used to be Z-Lane in New Orleans, they're one of the bigger success stories.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago that they got another funding round, and they've been doing all sorts of expansion. I know they started a sales academy to help train people in other roles to like come in, so that they're helping do workforce development to get people in those higher paid roles in New Orleans.
Let me say it a different way. Are you convincing people to stay in New Orleans?
Am I?
If someone asked you, should I stay in the state? I'm doing this startup. I know it's very direct and maybe it's somewhat hypothetical, but I want to get right down to it. Like, is there benefits to staying? Obviously, I'm going to say yes too. Part of I've dedicated now a few more years here with Amanda, and we're we want to be successful here. What's the outside of like those companies, what's the benefit?
Well, okay, so for instance, in the report that I'm sending out tomorrow, one of the things that came up, there was a report that just came out from Lending Tree that was this study of all of the different entrepreneurs across the country and like age ranges, and apparently New Orleans topped the list nationwide for youngest entrepreneurs in the country. And I think part of that, even though, cost of living is increasing down here as opposed to what it used to be 10 or 15 years ago, but that's kind of everywhere, right? It's a lot cheaper to live in Baton Rouge or New Orleans or other places like that versus, Silicon Valley and San Francisco is super expensive, but even Austin has gotten crazy expensive. So even if we're just talking in the Southeast, it's still a lot cheaper to live in New Orleans or Baton Rouge than it is in Austin or Atlanta.
My sister lives in Nashville. She's been there for 2 years, and her rent has already gone $450. And it doesn't seem like much, but that's still a lot of money. And like the people, but it's growing, and it's very. That's a good point. So the cost of living, I agree. Some people look at like investments being difficult down here. we had a local founder who just did a trip through the Carolinas actually to raise money. I was trying to make contacts in the Bay, and I try my best to make them here, but there's this southern charm you have to work through to get to the table, and it's like very so. And I'll say it this way: I recently got advice that we're going through investing. They say, I'm like, yeah, this is how I'm reaching out. They're like, why? I'm like, well, that's the way I was told. Like they're like, just get to the point. Like, get to the point. You're emailing them to ask if you want to get money. Straight to it. The problem I find is like they don't respond to that here. And I could be wrong, but here's the social capital. There's the meritocracy. It's the the financial essence of New York. But like, it just doesn't work the same way. But then again, that's what it does is slows us down. Do you see that? Do you see that it slows, keeps us behind?
Yeah, I feel like the way that you described it was a very diplomatic way of describing it. But
I tried.
I would agree. I'm not gonna argue all of your points.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, even there was an article that's included in the Southern Startup Report I'm sending tomorrow that was in the Advocate recently. I don't remember the name of the council, but it was like a council of entrepreneurs across the state, and they basically were making recommendations. This is supposed to go to the governor's desk about like how we could improve entrepreneurship in the state. And one of those things was access to capital. They were suggesting that we increase like the tax credits for angel investment. Yep. Like I know when I was just in Tennessee a couple weeks ago at Vanderbilt, they, in many ways, Nashville is not that far ahead of where we're at, but at the same time, they have a lot of state resources as far as the way they're trying to do the tax credits for angel investment.
Scott, our advisor, Adrian, she just mentioned somewhere. She was asking us about that. Where she is, I think it's like over 50%. Todd, what's our tax credit here for investments? 25%. Okay, so that makes sense. It is on the lower end. Interesting. So that's the kind of stuff I feel like most of us like. I mean, I'm not even thinking of that when I think of trying to reach out to people. I just think, but again, that's I'm not the one, throwing money around, so it's different.
Well, and it's also, there's different types of businesses, right? Like there's the kind of businesses that want to look for like angel investment or venture capital or whatever, and then there's other types of entrepreneurs that don't want that. So it's also like, what type of business are you building? Yeah.
And so it's okay. I appreciate us going that route because I feel like funding is something we talk about a lot, and it always kind of comes back to it. Maybe I'm the one that pulls us into it. In terms of marketing, let's kind of, because at the end of the day, if someone stays here, they set up a great business. It's cheap to live. We use the advantages. Now we have to market ourselves, and this is where I kind of want to get into the personal branding side. This is something I feel like you have a lot of experience in. How would you rate the importance of that for a young startup in terms of building their personal brand or identity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important in a lot of ways, and I think a big part of brand, whether it's personal brand or company brand, is digging in and understanding who are you or who are we, right? Like, what do we stand for? How do we want to show up in the world? How do we want our relationships with other people to be? Because a lot of times people who aren't familiar with branding basics or marketing basics hear brand and they think it's something like a logo or like these are our brand colors, which those are parts of it. Yeah. But that's not all of it. That's like the color that you paint the interior of your house is part of that, but you still need a foundation and beams and stuff.
And people in the house and decent people, right? I mean, you need...
Or the people that are right for you to hang out with in your home.
Interesting point. So as you know, so if a startup's thinking about it, hey, we want to figure out what our brand is. Where does that start? Is it building out their brand deck and understanding how they're going to communicate and like kind of if we could start just from the basic, and we won't get into it too much, but just so like if everyone here just had to validate their brand really quick, what would be the thing to ask them? Like, have you thought of X?
So usually when I do branding workshops, whether it's personal branding or like with a company, starting with basic questions about why are we in business? Or if it's a personal brand, like, why do I want to do this career? Or like, what are my goals?
Yeah.
Right? Like, start with the end in mind and what is your goal?
Yeah.
And then those things like, how do I want people to feel when they interact with me or when they interact with this company? I think about that a lot. Like one of my favorite quotes is the Maya Angelou quote about people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget the way that you make them feel. And like, if you hurt somebody's feelings, even if you might be able to repair that to some degree, like, they're always gonna remember that, right? And so I think being really intentional is a huge part of branding, but in order to be intentional, you have to understand who you are and how you want to show up in the world, whether that's as an individual or as a company.
And then, so I want to take this into the team aspect, because this is something I know you. I mean, I think it just gets missed a lot, like how we build our teams. Hey, that guy can code. Great, come here, man. Let's code. Like, hey, that guy can do marketing. Let's market. Like, but before we dive in, let me just scale back really quick. You're working on a project called TowardsTogether. All right. Would you mind sharing what that is for us?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to go into professional speaking. And I realized when I started thinking about my why for what I wanted to speak about, because when I started speaking, originally it was about marketing topics, but I realized that's not what I was passionate about. And I started digging into it and I realized I really am passionate about diversity and inclusion and like wanting to understand all different types of people and wanting to make people feel included and like they belong, because it really sucks when we feel like we don't, right? And so I started thinking about what that looked like for me. And I've been thinking about that stuff around the same time that I went through a lot of changes in my life. So as I mentioned with Look Far, about a year and a half ago, my job went from being a full-time salaried director of marketing position to being a part-time job very quickly. That happened right as I was deciding to leave my partner of 15 years. And then my dog died too. My dog was old. But it was just like this series of like all these things within like 1 month. And my whole life just kind of fell apart. And so coming out of that, I ended up getting involved in this program that's basically like grad school for public speakers. And I started working on what's now become this theatrical Keynote / one-person show.
I've seen your videos. They are out there, and I love it. I love it. If you get the chance, I'll put it in the email after. Just watch one of the. I think then there's a 5-minute one and like a 10-minute one. Just watch it. And if you're ever thinking of being scared about public speaking, watch her and be like, okay, I'll go do it, because she just takes it to the next level. I'm sorry to interrupt. I watched it 2 days ago and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I created this one-person show, basically. I premiered it last July. It was originally called Embrace Your Weird. So it's broadly about judgment and thinking about the ways that in some way I think all of us have felt judged at some point, right? Or felt like weird or felt like we didn't fit in or not normal. But then we also, for the most part, at some point have a tendency to judge other people. And I think a lot of that, it's so intertwined, right? It's like we feel judged, and then we judge other people, and it's this cycle. And I learned a lot of that coming out of this relationship and my job change and all this stuff. And so the show is like a culmination of all those things.
Yeah.
I rebranded it, so like a month before I was supposed to do the show, I'd already booked the venue, I'd already started marketing and selling tickets, and was calling it Embrace Your Weird, and had been using that for a while. And like a month before the show, I found out that Felicia Day, the actress, had a book coming out in October called Embrace Your Weird.
Oh.
So,
Wait, was that the book that you were writing?
Well,
was it titled Embrace Your Weird?
I mean, I was going to write the book with the same title as the book. So yeah, I was like, this is going to be a problem. I need a new name.
It's very unfortunate.
But it was a good time for it to happen. It was before I'd done that much with it. So when I did the show in July, I left Embrace Your Weird as the name because I was already selling tickets. But I started brainstorming and thinking about a new title. And I'm glad because I like Towards Together better. I feel like it more encapsulates what I'm really trying to do. So a couple weeks ago, late January, I launched this 1-week campaign to kind of kick things off. I did the show again at the venue that I did it in over the summer. And so basically now it's kind of like this ongoing campaign. So the idea is that you make a little sign. It doesn't have to be this fancy. You can do it on like a little postcard or Post-it note or something, but write #TowardsTogether. Take a photo, take a selfie, whatever, and then post that photo to your favorite social media platform. Tag me, Mallory Whitfield. If you're on Instagram, Towards Together has its own handle as well, and use the #TowardsTogether. But basically, in the caption, share a story about a time when you felt like you didn't belong, or when you felt judged, or maybe when you judged somebody else and then realized later that you don't feel right about the way that you were judging them, right? Because I think that like so often we don't talk about this stuff. We don't talk about it publicly, and maybe we talk about it in these small conversations, but I think that the more that we can come together and share stories and have other people understand our experiences and perspectives, and the more that we can be vulnerable with each other, I feel like the more that we can move towards a more peaceful state, a state of less judgment, a state of less divisiveness, a state of less violence, because the world is like scary and divided, and there is so much going on that we could really use to lean on each other and be able to work together. That's the idea.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's, I feel like we sometimes, I almost try to lean away from that because of like, to talk about it, right? I'm all about talking about, hey, let's talk about bad things in business. But when things get personal, it's like, ask my fiance Amanda. She knows I don't want to talk about it. I'll talk about business all day long. I'll ridicule myself. It's all about that. But it's a good point that you say. We all hate to be judged, but then the minute we want to turn around and we'll do it. And even in the sense of business, like that is not what great leaders do. That is not what creates great teams. And you actually give this talk to companies, right? Because this is where the inclusion part comes in, and the benefit of having and this openness to people. Yeah. Is this right?
So that's the plan. So this is me being very entrepreneurial with my speaking thing, right?
Yes.
So yes. I produced the show myself at Always Lounge in New Orleans. They have like a theater space. So I produced it myself in July in order to get some video of it, in order to get it in front of people. From that, I paid a friend of mine who's a videographer to come and film it. So I got some video footage. I was able to book a paid speaking gig at West Texas A&M University off of that. So I've done it for college. I've done it for a high school in Gulfport High School as well, and then I did it again. So I'm working towards getting it booked for professional audiences. I invited some people from our local NOLA SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Managers. Got some really good response. So I'm working on getting it in front of those business audiences. Because
so let's just talk about that really quick. Is this idea of inclusion itself, this idea of diversity, and where's the benefit for a company, especially us? We're looking at maybe I know me and maybe some other startups, like we have 2 people, 3 people, right? Where does that start? Where do we have to start thinking about it?
So there's lots of ways to think about it, and obviously, like when you're a bigger company, as you grow and expand, this becomes even more important to make sure that your team doesn't become totally homogenous of one type of person in whatever way that means, right? Because having people with different backgrounds, different skill sets, different ways that they were raised, different life experiences, it creates more innovation. There's people who see problems in different ways, and therefore you get a wider range of possible solutions to those problems, right? And also, you can potentially prevent pitfalls, like all of these things that happen where companies get called out for some terrible thing that they did, they probably didn't have a very diverse team working on their marketing or working on their tech or whatever it was.
When everybody's thinking the same way, they've been raised the same way, thinking the same way, serving a global audience, it doesn't necessarily work out.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. That's yeah, and I know that's a topic we can, we could get very deep into. But I'm going to attach some of your little snippet of talks in there, and for people to learn a little more about that. Now, you have so I'm going to change gears a little bit. You have a very interesting background. So not many people know, Mallory won 3rd place in Etsy's nationwide upcycling contest in 2007 for an outfit she made using FEMA blue tape. Tarp. Leftover from, I'm dyslexic, so I miss words. Tarp leftover from Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
What?
Okay, so.
What is this?
Okay, so how many of y'all were around, or you've been through other hurricanes? If not, how many were around for Katrina? Yeah. So you remember a lot of the roofs have the blue tarp on them, right? Because before you get the roof fixed, you want to make sure that rain doesn't come in. So our whole Gulf Coast region had all of those, plenty of them. And there'd been this event in 2006 at some point. It was one of the nonprofits that works with coastal wetland restoration, like America's Wetlands, I think might have been the organization. Somebody there organized this fashion show where they asked local artists in New Orleans to take some of the leftover tarp and make outfits out of it. I think they had this around Mardi Gras that year. And so I participated in that and made one outfit and saw a bunch of other cool things that people had made. So then, flash forward a few months, Etsy was just getting started, because this is early 2007. I think they got started in 2005 maybe. So they created this huge nationwide contest to try to get a lot of people adding things, because in order to enter, you had to post the product for sale on Etsy. So you had to make this thing out of something that would otherwise be thrown away, and then turn it into something somebody would want to buy and keep.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just gonna play off this, FEMA blue tarp thing. Everybody was still really into, on the news, this was still a topic of conversation. So.
And they bought it from you.
They bought it from me. And
is it in a museum? Where is it?
Well,
where did they put it?
I don't know if it still lives there, but they bought it, and it lived at Etsy's headquarters in Brooklyn. So they bought
That's
it.
crazy.
I got to sleep at Etsy's headquarters in Brooklyn. They had this trunk show with one of the groups of people that made stuff, and they let me sleep at their headquarters. That was one of the more bizarre things that's happened in my life.
That's when you know you made it. When a big company lets you sleep at their headquarters. That's fun. So another thing, you were a member of the 501st Legion, an international fan-based organization dedicated to the construction and wearing of screen-accurate Star Wars costumes. I have to read it like that because I'm not familiar with it. I've read it 6 times, and I have to.
So my ex.
So I have a question. Do you want one of those shirts, our Star Wars themed Star Wars grind shirts?
So I
feel like it's a perfect fit.
I was tangentially interested in Star Wars. So my ex that I was with for 15 years was very into Star Wars.
This is a touchy subject.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Right.
So he was very into Star Wars. So he had grown up with Star Wars and always wanted to have a stormtrooper costume.
Yeah.
And so there's this organization called the 501st Legion. And this is only for all the bad guys in Star Wars. There's a whole separate organization for the good people in Star Wars that's called the Rebel Legion. And then there's also the Mandalorian Mercs, which is the mercenaries like Boba Fett. It's very complicated.
It's a great show.
So these organizations started in the late 90s, I guess. And they've grown. They're huge and worldwide, and they have all these different groups, and there's one in Louisiana which is called Bast Alpha Garrison. I would still know who to put you in touch with, I'm sure, if you're a Star Wars nerd and want to get involved. But yeah, basically they have all of these different rules for all of the costumes in all of the Star Wars that you have to follow the exact specifications, and you have to submit pictures of your costume from all these different angles in order to join.
It fits. You're very creative. You're not.
They do a lot of fundraising for charity. They do a lot of children's charity fundraising.
So Mallory, and look, these are just two that I found interesting. Mallory has
That's not even the weirdest stuff.
That's not even the weirdest. I don't know how to pick them. There's so many fun facts. So I love it. I love your background. I love the way that you got into where you are. Thank you for coming up. I have a couple rapid fire questions for you. All right. So just yes, no, or under 5 seconds. Co-working space, yes, no.
No.
No. Oh, that's you're the first one to say no.
I need to work at home alone.
Okay. Exit fast or grow?
Grow.
Good. Okay.
Depends on the company.
You're committed. Okay, you're committed. I get it. Biggest opportunity in the market?
Which market?
Any market. Any market you see. What's something that is exciting to you? I don't know.
How do we carbon capture and save us
Great.
all?
I love it. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
It's easier. Okay, there we go. Favorite productivity tool?
Sleep.
I love it. Your go-to karaoke song. I knew you would have something.
Wait. This is like a whole list in my phone.
Okay. Let's do one.
Okay.
Just one.
So my favorite, but it needs two people. I have to sucker dudes into helping me with this, which I have done on multiple occasions, is Paradise by the Dashboard Light, but I play Meatloaf.
Okay.
And I get a guy to play the girls part.
Okay. Is there anything you collect?
Experiences.
That's so good. That's so good. Sushi or tacos? Last one.
Oh, usually tacos.
I love it. No one has said sushi yet. Tacos all the way. Thank you so much. We're gonna do a quick Q&A. So I'm gonna call on two people from each side. So we'll start with this side and we'll go back and forth. Okay. So maybe we'll spend 5 minutes on it. Questions? Anything for Mallory? Yes.
So what kind of marketing did you do for your job when that was?
At FSC Interactive, like when that was. So when I started at FSC, I was in the search engine optimization department. And then, like I said, I started part-time and then I went to full-time. And when I went to full-time, they asked me because there was a lot of gaps that they could fill that I could have filled. Like I could have done social media. And so I ended up doing a little bit of social media when they needed it for certain clients, but I primarily started out doing SEO and blogging. I later switched to the creative department, so I was still doing a lot of content marketing and blog writing and newsletter writing. Because
That's the primary.
yeah, because even now, most of what I do is content marketing. Like I love long form content. I've done a lot of super in-depth posts that drive traffic back to my own sites. So I was adapting what I knew from working on my own blog for so many years to their clients.
Yes.
Like Facebook Blueprint has like Facebook has the blueprint where you can go and learn how to run ads and stuff like that. What would be the go-to SEO tool that you would, or even videos to watch or who to listen to help learn? I mean, Google obviously, but like.
So the question is, who would I recommend to help learn search engine optimization, SEO?
Or what would you?
Yeah. So I think that all of these people and resources are still active because I've kind of switched gears a little bit. One source that I love is Moz, M-O-Z. It used to have Rand Fishkin was like one of the founders. He's stepped away, but they would have these great videos every Friday called Whiteboard Fridays. They would post to YouTube. And I think they still have a lot of really good stuff. There's also Brian Dean, who has a site called Backlinko. And he has a lot of really great YouTube videos, and I'm pretty sure he's still active in that because SEO is like his main thing. So those are my two main things. HubSpot usually has a lot of good information about marketing in general. I don't know as far as like courses. It's more that I learned a lot with SEO from trial and error and testing things because every audience and industry and vertical is going to be a little different, but those are really good resources.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Yes.
In your opinion, what's something that every business owner should do, but no one does?
I feel like you like prepared this question, like generalizations, because I feel like people are so different as individuals, and then businesses are so different.
Or it could be an attitude.
I mean, I guess back to my gut answer of like sleep as being a productivity tool, right? I feel like that whole like culture of like hustle, that not every business owner does. I feel like we're having more awareness around sort of how that could not be great. But I feel like whenever business owners lean into anything that's just like the trendy thing to do or what everybody tells you to do, that's the thing that you maybe shouldn't be doing. I feel like listening to our guts more about what we need in our own business, I feel like that's the thing that business owners need to be doing more of.
I think you're supposed to answer inclusion.
I mean, I think that answer was being inclusive of all the different types of business owners and businesses.
Anything else?
What was the grad, you said you went through some sort
Oh.
of graduate program for public speaking?
Public speaking, yeah, so I did this program called Heroic Public Speaking, and they have a program called Grad. They also have an introductory program that's like 2 days called Core. If anybody's super interested in it, connect with me afterwards and I can put you in touch with all the information. But they also, just to give you background on it, it's founded by this guy Michael Port and his wife Amy Port. And so Michael and Amy both trained in acting and theater way back in the day, and then he went on to then start a business and did speaking on sales and marketing for a really long time. It was like a huge keynote speaker, and now he does training for professional speakers and just people who want to speak better for whatever reason. And so he has a book and a podcast called Steal the Show. That's actually one of the podcasts I was listening to on the drive up here earlier. So.
Awesome. Anything else, guys? Last question. Yeah, go ahead.
So, with the business, if you had to choose between the two, inbound or outbound marketing, which would you say is more effective if a business could only choose one, and why?
Okay, this is the thing. I don't like to answer questions just broadly without knowing what that business is that I'm answering the questions for, right? Because I don't believe in prescriptive one-size-fits-all marketing advice. Because every business is different and every audience is different. And so much about marketing depends on who are your customers, who's your audience. So I'd be happy to talk offline if you want to dive deeper, but I don't want to just say like a one-size-fits-all answer to that.
Can I sneak one more in there?
What?
Can I sneak one more question?
Go ahead.
What would be like your goal for the next six months to a year, like with the series and the book coming?
My goal? My personal goal.
Yeah. Rainbow scenario.
My personal. So I'm just at the very, very early stages of writing the book version of this show. So over the next 6 to 9 months, I would love to just continue to work on that. I'm probably going to self-publish it. I have an idea in mind of if I found like the perfect agent, the perfect publisher, and I kind of know who that would be in my head. But other than that, I'll probably self-publish. And then honestly, just getting the full show in front of as many audiences as possible, whether it's colleges, like I really love those audiences. I don't want to speak exclusively to colleges. So if anybody works at like LSU or anybody else and can get me in front of a college audience, like let's talk. But also in front of corporate audiences and just people. Like that's the thing is every time I do the show, whenever I've done it, people afterwards are like, oh my gosh. Like, so I just want to spread the message. I want the message to be like the coronavirus, but not deadly. Sorry, was that too soon?
No, maybe. Well, your message has been strong, and we couldn't thank you enough for coming out and sharing it with us, and hopefully everybody get to stay connected with you beyond this. So thank you so much. Please get a round of applause for Mallory, you guys. Thank you. So with that, we do this, guys. We do this every month, and then it's only possible with our partners, whether that's food or gift cards, or our podcast, or these amazing filmmakers here. it all comes together because of this. And then also, another strong partner and really our sponsor for this event is Louisiana Technology Park. So, Steven, I'm going to invite you over if you'd like. Maybe give a 20 seconds or so of what the tech park is. Mentor is incubated out of there, and you guys have been amazing to us. So, maybe you want to share that?
Thank you so much. It was fantastic listening to you. So the Tech Park is the hub for technology-enabled companies here in the Baton Rouge area. We have several programs happening. This Thursday is how to do killer pitch decks, and our own Todd Lowry back behind us is going to be doing that. And then Pitch VR is our quarterly pitch competition. You've all heard of Shark Tank. Well, this is Guppy Tank because we have 3 companies that go up there, and it's all about lifting these companies up. Y'all have been a part of that as well.
Yes.
So that's coming up on March 17th. And then also, we're part of a bigger organization called Nexus LA. You'll start seeing a lot more of that around our building and around the community. Genevieve Silverman is in charge of that. So if any Todd or Jen or I can help you with anything, please let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'll be sharing some of the information. All of this will be in the wrap-up newsletter you guys will get tomorrow. Over to the winners. I think there was a lack of posts, so if you would like, for the drawing, if y'all want to just give me a couple cards, I will draw it and give this stuff away, because I'm not going home with any of it. Yes, look, the cards are flying out. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. That was easy. Our friend, you do the honors. I'm really biased. I already know what comes with it, so.
I hope no one knows.
All right. So for the salesperson's paradox, which is from our mentor and advisor, it goes to Charlotte Adams. There you go.
Okay. Something I'm looking.
Okay. $25 gift card to Canes, to Tiffany, to Manila. To Manila. There you go. Serious work.
He's honorable.
Perfect show.
2 gift cards to Dinner Patty, to Jeff Lokowitz. There we go. So the next 2, I'll just need to get a t-shirt size for the Startup Grind Star Wars themed t-shirt, and that goes to Fresh Tea. No. Who's that? Oh, Ferdos. There you go. Hey, congratulations. I'll follow with you on this stuff, okay? And then, lastly, for the concepts planner that they're sending over, they're going to email straight to you, Tony Phillips. There you go. Thank you all. Thank you for working with me. We're going to keep doing this. We'll hopefully have different stuff from month to month. Now, what's coming up next, guys, is we will have Chris Jordan here, the CEO and co-founder of OmniDeck, a local startup. They raised $3 million here in the area, and it's been one of, I think, great success that we all should look to it and be proud of, and someone I look up to and I've been talking to lately too. Following that, we will bring in Dima Gawi, and she is an amazing speaker who has an amazing story coming from Jordan, and that's going to be one that, she kind of demands a bigger audience, so we will be at a different venue. This says Timber, but we'll have to go to a different venue. We're very, very excited about bringing her on, and having said this, there is some big news I do want to share. When I was in the Bay Area, I was talking to the people from headquarters, and And I hype you guys up a lot. I'm like, they come out, and like, they fill the room, like they're there, they're listening. Well, turns out that's doing better than 80% of all 600 chapters, which is very, something I didn't know. All I knew was I was like, I want to get people that I want to meet, that they can meet other people, and I want to hear some stories. That's it. I want to do something on a monthly basis. Well, they took note of that, and they have given us the permission to do a summit here in Baton Rouge. So what that means is, give yourself a round of applause, because it doesn't happen without y'all's support. So what that means is global, the headquarter sponsorships, partnerships, speakers that they can send us, and it means that when I was in the Bay and I tell people I'm from Baton Rouge, and half of them say they have no idea what I'm talking about. Not being generous, it's probably 9 out of 10 don't know where the hell Louisiana is. That means something. That means that we have an opportunity to get on the map. We have an opportunity to get on the map, so it's not just Baton Rouge, it's the entire state, and to be able to bring people down through this, through this tool of Startup Grind is one thing I'm very excited about. So more news is to come. More information on how to get involved will be coming out in the several months ahead. So that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for coming out, and I appreciate y'all so much. Thank you. Okay.